gonna try to make this part simple, right? Because then, years later, you still going through that thing, you still struggle, you're still struggling in your flesh, and you don't realize that there's something more spiritual. And then I remember we came to Tampa, so this is fast forward, moving to Tampa, and then, when I got here, like when we got here, we moved in, like I started just going for walks, and it was crazy because I started connecting, like, what I was calling was the universe at that time, right? But I was connected with all life forms, right? So I would call it the universe. I would call it this and that, energy, all this other stuff. And we know the science behind it, right? But I remember, and there's it was something more that I just couldn't pinpoint. And man, guys, I remember, 2023, and I remember going to Kairos fellowship in Tampa. And I remember visiting, and I remember, hey, I'm watching the door, I'm like, yo, they got the music too loud. I remember that. And, I don't know, I just had this one time where I just was like listening to the music, and I closed my eyes, and I remember, the experience of like, yo, if you know me, like, I'm not going to know when they call altar or altar calls, right? I'm not doing that. If you know me, hey, I'm standing in the back. I might be a nice dude, but I'm a warrior. I ain't showing that kind of sensitivity to around nobody but my wife, And I remember closing my eyes, and I remember singing. And I remember, I don't know how I got to the front of the altar, but I was there. I was, up front of the church. And I remember back then in 2023 that I closed my eyes and I heard Pastor Sheldon praying. And I remember he came to me, and I remember this whisper in my ear saying, your life will never be the same. And when I tell you, it was the beginning of something so much beautiful. And it was like I had an out of body like experience, because like I resembled like Mortal Kombat. If anybody knows about Mortal Kombat, like when, what is it, like Sub-Zero, one of them guys hit you, and you could see, give me your soul, right? And it was like, I remember he touched my chest, and I remember like the experience. It was like I got hit hard, but it didn't hurt. And I remember when I just was so filled with so much emotion. I was filled with so much, like, it was joy. It was like the greatest happiness, and I just couldn't stop crying. And I remember when I opened my eyes, it was like everything was like, it was like, okay, the stage was right there, but when I opened my eyes, I saw a depiction, like multiple pictures, right, or of something of like God showed up to me. And all I heard was, your life would never be the same. And that was my first ever experience, and I cried. I remember going back in the back of the fellowship, and I remember like trying to leave, and I remember it was something in me, like felt like I wanted to like just climb the walls. Like I wanted to go back out how when I first came in. I wanted to go back to how I was before I came in, and it was at that time I would call it crazy, right? And I still didn't understand. It was like, God showed it was a power, so I knew it was God because I've never experienced that before. I remember even the next day, I took a shot of tequila because they wanted to meet, and as a man, I ain't never had no power. So when you think about somebody having so much power over you, you like, if you know me, I was like, nah, man, I ain't going to see that. Hey, I need to see him in the face. I don't want to talk to him like that. I got to see him in the face. And when I seen Pastor Sheldon, I remember like, I'm like, and it was like two different, it was like night and day. So moving forward, I still didn't really understand. I just kind of going through the process, but I believed in life. I believed in the universe. I believed in energy. I still believe in those things because it all comes from God, right? So, but I remember just trying to figure it out, like, how can we give people their power back, right? How can you tap into, you know, this power that exists within yourself? How can we tap into that? And I remember I just really couldn't get it, right? But I know that I can get it for me. But when I struggle, it was like, man, it's weird, right? It was like, yo, something, my thoughts is crazy. Like something's like, you know, something telling me something, man. And I'm like, but every time I said that I was going to go a direction of, man, okay, they talking more spiritual. I never really knew it was a distinction between spiritual and religion. I say that again. I never knew it was a distinction between spirituality, like you're spiritual, you walk with God, and you got religion. And slowly, last year, God's been working on me, and I didn't know, right? I'm thinking, you know, I have this power that God gave me physically, and, you know, you can change your own reality type of thing, right? You can control what you can do internally versus externally. You start listening to even speakers and prosperity, or even people who are strong mentality, or even people who have success, and you're thinking like, okay, all right, and not thinking about like, yo, those are maybe principles or characteristics of what the Bible, you know, what the power that the Bible, that the Word of God talks about, right? So then I started getting more, you know, asking more questions, you know, for myself. Me and my wife would be sitting there living for hours sometime, and I'm just like, nah, man, nah, you know. And then it hit me, man. It came to me one day. I just made a decision. You know, I've tried everything, right? And I just said, you know what? Let me follow this spirit thing. Let me try this. I've tried everything else, you know, and like, I still haven't found that thing. I still haven't found this pure joy. Like, what is it besides, you know, accomplishing my goals? What is it that's out there besides all those things? What is it? It gotta be more, right? You can make. I done made a boatload of money. I done traveled, man. Like, yo, and I'm wondering, like, I was really wondering, like, yo, it gotta be more, B. It gotta be more, and you know, God, man, reach me, you know, and I've been, you know, and the Bible talks about, and I believe it's in Matthew 7, and it just talks about how you seek, you know, you knock, right? You know, knock at the door and it will be open. You seek and you shall find. And it was like, I remember reading those from a different point of view, from a religious point of view years ago, man. And I remember, you know, reading it, there was no power in it, you know? And everything that I've learned in the past, it was more like it used to happen. So there was no power. And I told my wife, I was like, yo, how do we give people that power